Hello and welcome to part 3 of how to make a root cellar and what are the advantages of having one. Now today I'm standing in my dark part of the cellar. This is where we store our vegetables, our fruits, and also everything that we process and make out of our own produce. Now the reason you need a dark cellar is because light is actually the enemy of foodstuff. If you have too much light falling on your root vegetables, you are likely to have them starting to sprout. And if they start to sprout, you won't be able to either sell them or consume them. They are great to plant for the next season, but they will not be good enough to eat. So that's the reason that we maintain a dark environment in part of our cellar, so that we allow our root vegetables to stay in the cellar for as long as, about 6 to 8 months. And we can actually save the seed for things like turmeric and ginger and potatoes, as well as onions, for us to plant the next year. This is also the place where we actually store all our pickles, jams, preserves, chutneys, whatever it is that we make for ourselves and also for our shop. This helps to keep all of this at an ambient temperature of about 17 to 25 degrees Celsius. And this is better than a refrigerator because everything is cold and cool, but it doesn't have the kind of extreme temperature that a refrigerator has. Now, whenever you put anything in a fridge, the minute you take it out, you tend to experience a thermal shock because the ambient temperature around us is more like 30 or 35, and the temperature within the refrigerator was more like 5 to 7 degrees Celsius. But when you take things out of the cellar, they don't experience that kind of temperature shock, and therefore products can be taken out as well as put back into the cellar without them experiencing any kind of a temperature shock. The dark cellar is the place that we store our vegetables and our fruits. And while in our kind of climates, they will not last for a very long time, but they do help to give you a buffer of a few days between your harvest and time to market, or between your harvest and when you're ready to eat them. Especially in seasons of harvest, like when you're inundated with lots of fruit from some trees, like maybe lots of mangoes or lots of lychees or lots of peaches, this provides a great environment for you to store those things for a few days before you're ready to decide what to do with all this produce. Typically, vegetables and fruits should be kept separately, and that's because most of the fruits produce a high amounts of ethylene gas in the process of their ripening. Now, if exposed to this kind of ethylene gas, vegetables tend to ripen or get spoiled too fast. So remember to segregate the two. This is also the reason why you need a high amount of ventilation in your room, so that the ethylene gas is constantly pumped out of your space and doesn't hang around here for too long, making everything else ripen too fast. When you make a cellar and put on shelves like this, you need to make sure that there is enough space around these shelves. None of them are touching the wall or the floor. Only then air will circulate around everything very nicely. In fact, if you notice the shelves that we have made, each one of them also has slats in between, and that allows for the air to move up and down between the shelves as well. We've also used shelves of different sizes and shapes because different kind of produce need different space for them to be stored. By making these shelves modular, we can actually, move them around and put whatever we need wherever. And we're not constricted by a very fixed kind of, shelf plan, which doesn't allow us the flexibility of moving things around. The floor in this part of the cellar also continues to be that of packed earth. And like I said, this stays cool and allows us to actually increase the humidity by putting in water on this floor or doing a wet mop, which we do every week. Ventilation is of extreme importance, and typically you'll have a couple of vents at the bottom of the cellar bringing in fresh air, and a couple of exhausts at the top of the cellar taking out the stale and the warm air. So having your air circulate through this all the time is again something that you need to keep in mind. And how many of these to put and how many to not put is a decision that you will take basis your design and your space. I have to say that this root cellar did not really work out the way I had thought it's going to be, because most of my ideas and inspiration were from root cellars in the West. And in the West, the climate is completely different from ours. So when it's snowing outside, your root cellar is like your refrigerator. But in our climate, where it's not snowing outside, your root cellar actually acts as a stable storage environment where temperatures do not fluctuate, where you get a few days of buffer for your fresh produce, and where you get a long duration for storing your dry produce without it undergoing any thermal shock. So that's it from me from the dark part of the cellar, and continue to watch for one last video on the watchouts of what to look out for when you make a cellar and what not to do. See you soon.